Within the past year in Canada, you've had a Nazi be glorified, but also more importantly, be invited into Parliament. You've had taxes up the wazoo here in Canada. You've had the Liberal government absolutely flood and destroy most of our economy vis-a-vis immigration, and then say, you know what, we're going to start pulling back on that effective immediately. There has been some bizarre shit that's been happening here in Canada, which is why it's not so surprising that the likelihood of a fall election right now, this year in Canada, isn't that unlikely. We've seen some crazier things happen. We might actually just see that with the combination of Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau's ego, as well as social pressure. All of these factors are something that are considered when you kind of come to the conclusion that, wow, this might really happen. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. We're under 1,000 people away from being at the 400,000 subscriber mark, and that will be tremendously insane if you guys help this channel get pushed past that. So if you haven't yet, just take a look, see if you are or not subscribed, and if you're not, might as well smash that button. And without further ado, let's get into this. This entire video is going to be dedicated to talking about the potential of an election, seeing what Pierre has recently said, seeing what the media has said, also taking a look at what Jagmeet has previously said about this coalition. But it wouldn't be a Mr. Sunshine Baby video if we didn't start off with the polls. So Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party are sitting at 203 projected seats, bottom line 175, top end of 229. It is looking still very good right there. Liberals at 83 projected seats. And then when you look down here, odds of winning the most seats, 99% likely across the board. Oh, never mind. 99% likely for winning the most seats. 98% likely for a majority government, down from 99%. So even though there was a bit of a change, it's not anything that's too drastic. And we're going to have to wait and see in the coming weeks how that develops. But I think that once they resume Parliament in just under the month now, 26 days away or something like that, that is really going to kick off more popularity for Pierre Poilievre with, you know, the rise of social media and how many people it's reaching, and just the incompetence of Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh and their inability for quick wit on their feet. But now let's take a look at mainstream media here in CTV and what they have to say about what is going on.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants a federal election this fall. But to have that, he needs Jagmeet Singh to drop his deal with the Trudeau Liberals, something Poilievre publicly asked him to do today. That agreement is signed until June 2025, but the NDP is not ready to walk away yet. CTV's Rachel Aiello attended Poilievre's press conference today and starts us off tonight.
Standing in front of where the Prime Minister enters Parliament, Pierre Poilievre called on Jagmeet Singh to help get Justin Trudeau out of office.
Break the costly coalition with Trudeau to trigger a carbon tax election where Canadians can choose.
The Conservative leader wants the NDP to force a fall federal election by voting to bring down the minority government when the House resumes next month. Poilievre says the Liberal NDP deal needs to end because Trudeau demonstrated this summer that nothing will change for Canadians and they can't afford to wait another year. But going to the polls early would also be to the Conservatives' advantage.
Pierre Poilievre's leading on the ballot. He's leading on the preferred prime minister. Not a big surprise. He wants an election.
Through the two-party pact signed in 2022, Singh has advanced policies such as dental and pharmacare, progress his party is worried a Conservative government would put in peril. Responding to Poilievre's pressure campaign, the NDP say that leaving the deal is always on the table, but Poilievre wants to win an election because he wants to cut. The Liberals say they're confident their arrangement with the NDP will go the distance and view Poilievre's push for an early election as a sign that he's getting worried.
I think it's pretty pathetic that the good news, the good economic news that we are seeing for Canada and Canadians, the Conservatives feel is bad news for them.
Poilievre is accusing Singh of keeping Trudeau in power long enough to qualify for his MP pension, something the Conservative leader has already secured. The NDP leader will be eligible as of February, well ahead of the June expiry of the Supply and Confidence Agreement. Anne-Marie?
I personally don't view this as a sign of Pierre, the Conservatives, being concerned at all. I think that this is more about the integrity and adding social pressure to the situation, because in the past, now look, this is what Jagmeet Singh has said himself. This is encouraging. The NDP House leader says ending the costly coalition to bring down Trudeau is on the table in response to my demand for a carbon tax election. It looks like we might be headed to a carbon tax election. Singh is staying quiet, probably hunkered down with his team, deciding between his principles and his pension. Stay tuned. And this has almost 250,000 views in just a few hours, pretty much. So it's very interesting. And we've seen some super, super bizarre stuff happening here in Canada in the last 12, 24 months. And I wouldn't put it past anyone that this election is on the table. I think that it actually could happen. What's the likelihood? I don't know. Let's take a look at some of these videos that I have pulled up so that we can have a better understanding. But first, another X post here shared by Pierre Poilievre. Breaking, the NDP says ending the coalition triggering a carbon tax election is officially on the table. And this was shared by CTV. So again, it's not just a quote that Pierre has shared. It's an actual CTV article. And then you have this post right here where the Financial Post has quoted something from Pierre Poilievre. No one voted for you to keep Trudeau in power, which is something that is super underrated. A lot of people who voted, or everyone who voted for Jagmeet Singh, voted for Jagmeet Singh. Everyone who voted for Justin Trudeau voted for Justin Trudeau. No one expected any cross-contamination or cross-pollination between the two parties, especially not as a block to holding 41 plus million people hostage, politically speaking, here in Canada. And I think people are fed up. Liberals are definitely fed up. NDP supporters are definitely fed up, and we're in this very weird shift of politics right now that everyone is angry, and I think everyone's getting very anxious for an election, especially with the American election, 80 some or 70 some or 60 some days away. I think that waiting another 12 months is becoming less and less unlikely. I think you might see some form of a snap election in the next couple of months. If it ever was going to happen, now is the time. But Chrystia Freeland recently took to a stage to basically just try and bash Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party in this post here shared by True North. That's why we have banned assault-style military weapons, which isn't even a thing that you could buy in Canada legally, but sure, yeah, go after guns rights. Let's take a look at this, because she's criticized Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party for, being crazy gun advocates, and that's just something that's not going to budge in Canada. No matter how progressive the government is, no matter how woke it is, there are so many law-abiding gun owners here in Canada that it's just, you're not going to get away with this. Like, it's just not going to happen. People aren't going to be rushing to the polls to support banning guns when the only gun problem we have is the illegal guns used by criminals. And obviously they don't follow the guidelines, which is why they're illegal in the first place. But let's take a look at Freeland spewing mis and disinformation.
Toronto and GTA police forces are raising concerns about violent crime, like carjackings and gun crimes, as well as repeat offenders out on bail. York Regional Police highlighted a surge in violent crimes earlier this week. In Durham Region this morning, they told us that 23% of the arrests that are made for a gun crime involves a person already out on bail. And earlier this month, Toronto Police said that gangs operating with a total disregard for the safety and well-being of others. And separately, the Toronto Police Association called for action against 3 officers that were injured earlier this month, arresting a repeat offender. Is the federal government aware of the impact of the violent crime and gun crimes are having on communities, and what will be done about it?
Thanks for the question. Look, violent crime and gun crime are totally intolerable, are totally unacceptable. And very often it is the most vulnerable among us who are the targets of this crime and whose lives are made really miserable, really scary by the prevalence of this crime. And it is absolutely incumbent on all orders of government to be working together to end violent crime. It's incumbent for all police of all jurisdictions to be working together with all levels of government to put an end to this. I do want to highlight, because you've spoken about gun crime, that, one of the things that makes gun crime possible is guns on the streets. And that is why our government is acting so decisively.
I seriously think that because of the rise of drinking and driving, I think that we should just ban vehicles. I think that is dangerous for vehicles to be on the road. Now, if you've never been under the influence, behind the wheel, that doesn't matter, because some people have, and that's a crime. And you, who don't have any demerit points, any negative driving history, you should be punished because some people choose to break the law. Or some people don't even get a driver's license and decide to get behind the wheel, which again is illegal. So I think that we should ban all vehicles on the road because there are some people who do that. That's the logic that these idiots have. It doesn't make any sense. Gun crime by law-abiding gun owners is so small here in Canada. It's almost non-existent. If I'm not mistaken, it makes up less than 1% or 0.5% of gun crime here in Canada. There is no pissed off dude who's a law-abiding citizen who takes his gun out of his safe and goes and robs a bank. That doesn't happen in Canada, because the people that have to go through the checks and the exams to get their guns aren't those type of people that do that stuff, and they know the repercussions of breaking the law as a law-abiding gun owner, and that's not something that anyone is interested in doing who's a law-abiding citizen who has their gun permits legally. Because there are criminals that are getting guns illegally off the street, they're paying their buddies vis-a-vis some form of drug payment or debt or joining gangs. They don't own gun permits. It doesn't make any sense to go after law-abiding gun owners because criminals without gun licenses are illegally purchasing guns and committing crimes with said guns. But I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, and these liberal idiots just need to wrap their head around that concept, but they choose not to.
To get guns off the streets in Canada. That's why we have banned military-style assault weapons.
It's not even a thing.
Why should people have them? They should not. These make our lives more dangerous. That's why our government has introduced a freeze on handguns. These are policies.
Okay, first of all, a military-style assault weapon is not a handgun. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, my God. It's like they're pandering to like the 60-year-old women that live in condos in major cities that have no life experience outside of a major city. And that's it. And they're just going, oh, my God. Oh, there's guns on the streets. Oh, get them off the streets. It's just craziness. Anyone who, you don't even have to be a conservative. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. You don't have to be right-wing at all. Everybody knows, my voice is cracking, everybody knows that law-abiding gun owners in Canada aren't the ones committing crime. Again, less than 0.5%, if I am not mistaken, of gun crime in Canada is committed by that demographic. But anyways, we're going to have to switch the video up because that's just obviously triggering me and probably triggering other gun enthusiasts. In this clip, that's going to set off a whole other bunch of triggers. Chrystia Freeland dismisses Pierre Poilievre's concerns about the state of Canada's economy and says that Conservatives are showing how fundamentally self-centered they are. All they care about is themselves and their party. Just what a bunch of freaking gaslighting.
Pierre Poilievre says he will tie population growth to housing, healthcare, and jobs, suggesting there should be a big cut to immigration. What do you say to that?
I'm going to say a couple things. First of all, I do think it is really important for us as Canadians to recognize what a fundamental strength it is for us as a country that we welcome new Canadians. And we are good at welcoming new Canadians, and that is such a strength for us. It's a social strength, it's an economic strength. It's also the case, as our government has recognized, that there have been ways in which the system has been abused. There have been ways in which some of the modifications put in place to deal with the extraordinary circumstances around COVID are not appropriate today. And that's why our government has introduced a cap on the number of temporary residents. That's why our government has introduced a cap on international students. And that's why on Monday, the Prime Minister announced changes, restrictions to the temporary foreign worker program. Because frankly, you know, if you're in a city where unemployment is more than 6%, we want you to go out and hire Canadians. But I just want to conclude by reminding people of the fundamental hypocrisy at the heart of what we have been hearing from the Conservative leader today. Basically, his problem is that there is good economic news for Canadians right now. Inflation down to target range for 7 months in a row, interest rates coming down, the economy proving to be resilient, wages outpacing inflation. And economists are forecasting that that is going to continue and that next year Canada will have the strongest economic growth in the G7. Now, that is good news for every single Canadian. And every single person who has the privilege of being elected to Parliament and to represent Canadians should be celebrating that good news and should say, thank goodness we see light at the end of the tunnel after all of the challenges posed by COVID. But the Conservatives, I think, are showing how fundamentally self-centered they are. All they care about is themselves and their party, and they are seeing this good news for Canadians. They're seeing it as bad news for themselves. I think that tells you everything you need to know.
It should be a crime as a federal politician to use a platform like this on CPAC and to lie to people. It's just blatant lies. Nobody is scared. The Conservatives want nothing but the best economy for Canada. It doesn't make any sense at all. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Next up, you have this clip here from, or this article that was shared by Global News on their X account. There have been some abuses to the system, Freeland says, days after Ottawa announced it was cracking down on the temporary foreign worker program. Now, let's see what she has to say here.
I actually want to start by emphasizing how exceptional Canada is as a country in the way that we welcome new Canadians. We recognize all that new Canadians bring to our country, make our country more diverse, help with economic growth, make huge contributions. And really, as a country, as a society, one of the really extraordinary things about Canada is we welcome immigrants. We see them as new Canadians who have so much to offer and so much to contribute. That is a great thing about Canada. Having said that, there have been some abuses to the system. Something that I think we all recognize is when it comes to international students, we have seen some institutions not invite students here to really give them a good education, but really to abuse them. And that is not okay, and that is why our government has stepped in and introduced a cap on international students. Likewise with temporary foreign workers. You know, COVID was such an extraordinary time, and some exceptional policies were put in place to respond to the once in a generation, actually I hope once in a century, circumstances created by COVID and the subsequent lockdowns and closing of Canadian borders. Today, though, that is not the situation. And I think it makes so much sense to say, you know what, if unemployment is 6% or higher, we're not going to be processing new applications for temporary foreign workers. There are Canadians in your city who need a job. Look to them and offer those jobs to them. I think it makes a lot of sense.
It's just a total U-turn on what they were and what they have been saying for years. We need more immigration because Canada is such a wonderful place and we're so inclusive and we're an international airport, and our literal identity of our culture is multiculturalism. And now, because there's so much social pressure, in case you haven't noticed, like online, it's all about bashing Indians. It's everywhere, right? Maybe not as much on YouTube, but on X, it's everywhere because there seems to be an overflow of Indian population in many, many countries, but we're going to focus here on Canada, which is why Justin Trudeau has pulled back on that entire temporary foreign worker program, and he's cut off people at the knees where you can't apply to be a temporary foreign worker if you're outside of Canada. You can only try to extend your permit here in Canada, but it's now he's funneling that down, limiting that amount, and likely we're going to see a reduction in the amount of immigrants that are able to come here to Canada, which is a step in the right direction towards fixing our economy. We have a housing crisis. The Canadian people that are here already, we need, first of all, better pay. Our wages haven't gone up to match anywhere near inflation, even for the government employees other than the politicians themselves. Also, we need a tremendously large amount of houses being built to even accommodate our current population, not to mention a rise in population. It's super bizarre. But yeah, sure. Now she realizes, hey, let's pull back. It wasn't too long ago that Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, they were all criticizing Pierre Poilievre, or they were criticizing any idea or rhetoric that immigration is bad and there's too many immigrants. In fact, it was always the opposite for these people. We need more, we need more, we need more. Very, very bizarre that they turned around on that. Don't get me wrong, that's one of the very rare things that I personally, and likely a lot of people down in the comments, also agree that that's good. Hey, good job. You cut off the temporary foreign worker program. Permits, phenomenal. Do immigration next. Let's see if we can start getting those cutbacks, but we're going to have to wait and see.
To say we're not going to have more than 10% of people at a workplace be temporary foreign workers. Because at the end of the day, if you as a business think you need more, we have some real concerns about your business model. Having said all of that, in terms of policy going forward, I don't have any announcements to make today. And I do just want to conclude where I started by saying a huge strength of Canada, an advantage we have as a country, is that we are welcoming to new Canadians. That's a good thing. But we do have to be mindful not to have abuses, not to have an economy built, not to have business models built on low wage, sometimes exploited temporary foreign workers. And that kind of approach is the one that I think makes immigration to Canada socially and economically sustainable. It's important.
There's a massive loophole where there's even a lot of stories where foreign student visa applications, they basically bought their way into Canada. You had people that came here on student visas, right? They maybe paid $30,000 to an immigration consultant. They came here, they have a student visa, and they've never gone to school a day in their life. And they just start taking jobs from Canadians. It's such a broken system. Everybody has noticed it, from all the way up in the north, all the way down to the most southern point of Canada, all the way to the west coast, the east coast, and everywhere in between. It has been extremely, extremely noticeable.
Important for us as a country to recognize how valuable it is that we are a country that welcomes immigration, that welcomes new Canadians. Let's keep on doing that. It's also really important for us as a government to recognize some of the measures that were put in place during the extraordinary circumstances of COVID are not appropriate today. And that's why it has been so important to act decisively and to end those measures, particularly when it comes to international students, to temporary foreign workers, especially low-wage temporary foreign workers, and to put a cap on temporary residence. Those are all the right things to do. And for sure, it's the case that as our government is working hard with all levels of government, with home builders, with Canadians to get more homes built faster in Canada, it absolutely makes sense for us to be sure that as we are welcoming new Canadians, we have the homes for them and for people here who are here already. So that's the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is buying into that gaslighting that she just spews. It's just super disingenuous, and a lot of people cringe when Chrystia Freeland talks. But let's take a look now at a short breakdown of what could possibly happen if Jagmeet Singh were to pull out of this confidence deal here.
Could an early election benefit besides Pierre Poilievre? For that, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos. Vassy, what's your take on this, and what are the conversations around the timing?
Well, from a purely political perspective, Anne-Marie, I think there's hardly any chance that the NDP acquiesces to this and decides rather to go to an early election. There is simply no electoral imperative to do so. They have not benefited from the Liberals' dwindling fortunes in public opinion polls at all. And as it stands right now, if they were to go to the polls, they would likely lose seats, not even gain them. So there's not really the possibility of that happening, I would wager to say, anytime soon. As for why Pierre Poilievre is doing this now, from my conversations with people inside Conservative circles, and particularly around Pierre Poilievre, they have been instructed to act as though they are 20 points behind, not 20 points ahead. Not let things go. Make sure you are out there opposing stuff all the time. So I think this is part and parcel of that. The one sort of caveat I would add to that is keep paying close attention to what, not just what Poilievre says, but what he doesn't say. He's not really answering. There were only a few questions, less than a handful. Didn't give a lot of specific answers, in particular to the questions that Liberals and NDP have been posing, which are, you know, what are you going to roll back? If you're going to spend less money, what are you going to spend less on? Which big programs that they support are you going to roll back? He didn't say exactly what he would do. He characterized those as hypothetical questions. I expect those questions will continue coming over the near future. Anne-Marie?
Yeah, they certainly will. Thank you, Vassy.
We're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. Would you like an election happening in this fall, or do you think that there is a better outcome that could come from an election happening in 12, 13, or 14 months from now? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Personally, I think that an election coming this fall will be awesome. Like, let's just peel off the Band-Aid, get it over with, and then it's going to feel like Canadians have room to breathe, because I think everyone is just getting so much built up political tension that we want this election to happen, and 14 more months of waiting is going to just drive a lot of people sick. So I certainly would prefer it to happen sooner than later. But that's where we're going to end this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any comments, questions about any of the topics that were covered. On your way out, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And if you want to contribute to the channel, aside from just, you know, subscribing and liking the videos, there is a Buy Me a Coffee link down below in the description. I will see you all later. Bye for now.